My name is Peter Winning, and thank you for joining our Auto Talks Aftermarket episode. Our guests today are Juan, Manuel, Santiago, Mendez from Mercedes-Benz, John Willems from FedEx Express Europe, and Richard Hankinson from Unipart Logistics. After-sales service is one of the biggest influences in customer retention and maintaining the brand promise. So as I prepare really to hand over to our guests, and someone has to bring up the B word. So starting with you, Richard, from an aftermarket perspective, what's the latest on Brexit?
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Peter. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from the world to everybody else. Brexit clearly has been a challenge. It was, as much as anything, the uncertainty around exactly what processes were going to have to be in place around import and export. I think whilst most of that got resolved eventually just before we ended up on the 1st of January, in reality, it's been tough to navigate through that. I mean, everyone knows the headlines. If you happen to be in the seafood trade, it's not a great business to be in trying to export into Europe. But for the automotive world, it's been tough. We've had mixed results. I would probably the best way of putting it, with some of our customers struggling with their supply base in terms of filling out the right paperwork and the right authorizations for export and therefore import into the UK. Going the other way, we've had pretty much smooth outbound into Europe. I think initially there's a little bit of availability of trucks, effectively with the imbalance in the first few weeks of import and export trade. Effectively trucks were in the wrong place. But it has settled down dramatically so. It is clearly a more complex, more onerous process to operate than it used to be. But generally now, I have to say, it's working well. I don't know, John, I mean, John, from your perspective, what's the take in your business?
Yeah, the fortunate element was that we have had a few years' time to prepare, but in the express environment, dealing with many customers, with large companies who are well prepared, that is okay. But we need to deal also with very small companies, and as we have now the custom clearance process included there, informing all these people what to do, how to do it on time, what is required, has taken quite an effort. I think overall we cannot complain. The delays are manageable. They are there, but they are rapidly improving. So we try to damage the additional work that has landed on our tables.
Yeah. And what about Mercedes? Juan, how's your business been affected by Brexit?
Can you hear me well?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, great. I think it's quite similar what you said, Richard. I mean, we and John, we prepare for long, and that was probably the biggest challenge, in my opinion, because it was similar to COVID. We had some waves, right? So we had a first wave that we thought it was going to happen, didn't happen, and we prepared for it. We had a second one, we prepared for it and didn't happen. And finally, end of last year, it happened. I would say first weeks of 2021 were a challenge because of, well, delays and trucks coming in and coming out, documentation. I would assume also challenges with the drivers at one point as well, and the COVID tests. As you said, now is done. I mean, we are well, we are working well, we are having the proper supply chain. I'm happy to say that there was some kind of trade agreement because I really feel, in my personal opinion, that without that trade agreement, the business will suffer or would suffer in this country. So considering the scenario and the worst case scenario we got someone in the last years, I think we are in a pretty good position right now. Yes.
I have a question to probably you, Juan. I know we discussed in the past in one of the sessions that vehicle manufacturers, car manufacturers, in order to deliver their customers, have put up additional inventories in the UK. Being in Brexit now for a few weeks, do you see that you still need to have the additional inventories, or can you bring them down again?
We are going to keep it for the time being, John, because we don't know if the Brexit processes are fully stabilized yet. We are obviously monitoring every day how the borders are working, how the ferries and the trucks are coming, and it's going well, but we don't know. It's just March. We feel at least for the next 3 or 4 months, we have to really monitor that everything is going well. So at this point, I think it's good to keep it as it is, yeah, and keep an eye on the processes, and maybe might be mid of the year we could say everything is now going well and stable, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think on our side, John, that most of our customers are looking at sort of, I think I'd describe it as turning the dial down a bit, but not eliminating that stock that was put in towards the back end of the year. It is slightly too early, but as I said, I think overall the performance is much improved, and yeah, the fears of a complete disaster were unfounded. But as Juan said, ultimately we did get a trade deal in place. I think without that we would have been in a lot more trouble as an industry.
Yeah.
But Juan, you also mentioned COVID there. We can't possibly talk Brexit without talking the other major impact of 2020, and obviously ongoing as we rapidly approach the first anniversary of the first lockdown. What's been the impact on the Mercedes brand, and how have you dealt with it?
I think, Richard, COVID in the beginning, when it happened in March, exactly a year now, I think most of the countries were going into lockdown exactly a year now, the 14th, the 15th, the 16th, the 20th of March. I think we are all scared, right? We were very scared personally, mainly, of course, from the business point of view as well. But I would say personally, our life changed, and we also got, all of us, families in different places of the world, and people we could not see, people we could know. We didn't know when we were going to see them, right? I mean, it's not like, yeah, it's going to be over in May, June, December. We didn't know at that time. So, I mean, we put first the health of the employees in business as priority number one. So we said we have to protect the employees. We have to procure PPEs, screens. We have to isolate the workplaces. We have to even procure a temperature control camera for the inbound and so on. And it went very well. So we were able to work every single day. We didn't stop. We didn't close. So the supply chain really went. And I have to thank also the partners and the 3PLs that they work with us every single day, obviously, because if one of the partners didn't work, we could not have work. Yeah. So I really appreciate that everyone did their best. I think the COVID showed that, first of all, aftermarket and supply chain is important and is very important. Yeah. So we got a lot of credit all over the business, I would say. And the second thing is we also were able to show how resilient we are, right? I mean, we did it. We solved it. We were able to work every day. Then the second wave came in October, November, and we were able to do it, and we were able to keep our people healthy and safe. And now the vaccination is coming, and we are crossing the fingers and hoping that people will get vaccinated in the UK till June, July. So I'm proud of what we did during the COVID. Yeah, I cannot say I was not scared. I was scared in March, April for many, many reasons. And I would say personal reasons, most of them. But after 1 year, I can say we were able to keep the business running. Yeah. So, yeah, very, very, very happy. I'm very proud of how the supply chain is, how resilient is. Yeah.
Juan or Richard, from an aftermarket business perspective and COVID, do you see the business coming back already to pre-COVID levels? Because when I look to my car, I have been over the last year one time at the dealer, and that was to change the summer tires for winter tires. So I've had absolutely less maintenance and servicing on the car. Do you see these volumes coming back slowly?
I think it is the $64,000 question. What is going to be the new behaviour? I'm not going to say the new normal. That's been a well overused phrase. But as we come out of lockdown, clearly the traffic is going to increase again. To be honest, in the UK now, we've got the children back at school, and personally, I have seen in the last few days a huge increase in the amount of traffic in the mornings and in the afternoons. So I know that it is going to come back. But yeah, like you, I went to the dealership once last year, and I've done less than 3,000 miles in the last 6 months, and I normally do 30,000 miles a year nearly. So it's a huge drop in TVM, total vehicle miles. But I do see it will come back. I think there will be more working from home, don't get me wrong, but the relentless rise of convenience that people want in this country, in terms of that transport, that travel, mobility capability, I see that the mileage will come back. What's happened is the curve has been pushed backwards a bit, and it will take time to come back, and we're probably going to be 2 or 3 years behind in terms of the overall growth, but it will come. Yeah, is my view.
I have a similar thought, Richard. I think obviously the whole picture is complex, right? Because you have not only passenger cars like you or me or families driving, we have trucks and vans. This business is obviously not even much more than before. Those vehicles are driving more than before. I was also thinking about sharing. You know, many people was saying like, okay, I'm not going to go to work every day now. I can work from home maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Sorry, but at the same time, many people will not be that comfortable with sharing again, right? So, or jumping in the tube again, or taking a bus again. So, I think we will have to see in the next months how it's going to be. I probably agree with you, Richard. It's going to be back at one point, right? I think it's going to happen. When we don't know yet, but I think it's going to happen definitely. Yeah, we will. And you say right now, traffic is back. I mean, if you drive now 7 a.m. in the morning, traffic is like pre-COVID at this moment, right? Because the schools are open again and so on. So obviously, it's gonna be back at one point. Yes.
And I think I touched on something that I'd like to sort of get your views on in my last response, and that was around the mobility. And clearly the whole industry, the whole world of automotive is facing change like it's never faced before. We've been using the internal combustion engine for 100+ years. In fact, Juan, you work for the company that can claim to pretty much have invented the car. The future is going to be very different, from the powertrains to the mobility models to the autonomous driving. And clearly those are going to be huge disruptive technologies and influences coming into the industry. How do you see that's going to change over the next decade? And perhaps if I stick with Juan for a moment, but come back to John as well.
I think Richard, maybe 3 years ago the answer would be a little bit different because we did not know exactly, but now it's clear that we are moving into a much more a greener and cleaner transportation and powertrains and electric vehicles and or more efficient hybrid. And obviously, I think the whole picture is also complex. In my opinion, it has to start with the countries and the governments. The UK said now 2030 is the year when all the electric cars will be sold from that year onwards, right? Other countries will do a different thing. Of course, I don't expect in all over the world is going to be the same guidelines. I don't expect that, right? For me, the key is we have to create a whole supply chain one more time of a green infrastructure, which means that if we are able to put CO2 or zero CO2 vehicles in the road in the next years, the energy produced has to be green as well, right? So obviously we will need the generation of the energy will have to be clean as well, will have to be green as well. We will have to create that infrastructure in the country. We will have to create charging points in a huge number all over the country and countries. And probably we also have to think about, you know, if it's not only electric, or we are talking about fuel cell, hydrogen in the future and others, right? So yeah, the picture is going to change. For me, it's quite clear that it's going to change in the next years. How? I don't know exactly. Yeah, but it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a beautiful ride, in my opinion. Yeah.
And do you think, John, it's going to change your industry?
Yeah, absolutely. There is absolutely change to be expected when you see that an electrical vehicle, the full battery vehicle, has absolutely thousands of parts less than a standard combustion engine vehicle, and you may expect there is less maintenance expected. So from a business perspective, we probably see less coming. On the other hand, probably some bigger parts, there is an expectation, the relatively bigger parts from body parts, panels, etc., that will be involved. However, with the automation, connectivity of cars, the cars are talking to each other, the number of accidents is expected to reduce as well. So absolutely, this will have an impact. But I'm also interested in how the supply chain will look like. Juan mentioned already, and it's probably clear we're in a too early stage to determine how the supply chain will look like. But with the amount of electronic parts in an engine or in a car, in components, the average parts value will increase. Will we keep the same supply chain with large country warehouses and high inventory level as a result of that increase in parts price? Or will we move into a more centralized structure? Do you hear anything about that already, Richard or Juan? Are the company thinking in these directions?
Richard, if you don't mind, let me start.
Yeah, you go first.
What I feel also in logistics, and due to regulations, John, and you know about that, you have to keep parts for vehicles for many years, right? So yep. Obviously, it's going to be a transition, how many years of transition, I don't really know. But if at one point the whole car park, not the whole car park, but the new cars in the UK are only electric, you will still have a big portion of the car park which is not electric. So from the logistics supply chain point of view, you have to keep parts for those cars for a number of years, certain number of years, whatever that the law or the regulations say. So I think we will see that transition. We will see probably more, new car parts coming in, less old cars or internal combustion engine parts coming in. But there will be a transition of a number of years, and we will need to cope with that. We will need to cope with the space, with delivering those parts. Probably we will have to follow certain regulations to deliver specific parts for the new EVs, that you cannot mix with other parts. it's going to be a challenge again, how to manage that transition, right? And then don't know when, again, 2050 or whenever, 2045 or 2040, then will be a fully probably electric car park out there. For me, the big question, and it's something a little bit more personal, is I love classic cars. I love the old timers, right? I have a friend who has a Miura, you know, which is an amazing vehicle out there. How would you be able to drive a classic car in the year 2040? I don't know. Yeah, I would love to see, you know, sometimes also classic cars out there. Or so it's going to be a very interesting picture in the next 20 years, probably.
And I think if we all had a crystal ball that came with a 10-year guarantee, we'd all be in a different job than the one we're in. It is impossible to see exactly how all this is going to play out. But I think one of the points about the aftermarket is that there is a time lag effect to what is happening in the new car market. It takes 2 or 3 years to filter through for the car parks to build with the new models and the new technologies. So it takes time to filter through. So as Juan said, it is going to transition, but it is going to take a little bit of time to do that. It's not going to be instant and overnight. There still will be these, the internal combustion engine that will need to be serviced beyond 2030. So it is going to take a little bit of time. But I think probably, as you said, John, you touched on these very expensive components. And I can foresee that the industry is going to have to react to that from a cost of ownership perspective. All these very high tech componentry, the electronics, we're going to have to find a way of getting better at repairing. I mean, in the UK, just coming in now, is the right to repair law and it's coming in the EU as well, for home goods, so white goods, so your washing machines, your fridges, they have to be repairable, other than just chucking it in the landfill. And I think that same thinking has to come into the vehicle world, and I think we'll have to find ways to repair or refurbish some of these high-tech, expensive components in order to keep costs down.
I think that's an interesting subject, Richard, repairable. With the electrification of cars, more electronics in there, the complexity increases. In the traditional aftermarket, we see the independent aftermarket playing a role. But what will their role be in the future with this high level of this new technology and that high complex situation? Will they be able to cope there and play a role?
I think the independent motor trade will have to react. It's had to so far. It's had to deal with far more complex repairs, compared with 10, 20, 30 years ago. As the technology's advanced, the diagnostics, you can't lift the bonnet these days and check the timing on an engine. With a gun, you've got to plug in first. So the IMT's already had to react, and I see that this will be an evolution of that. And again, a little bit like the aftermarket in general, there will be a slight time lag from the point these technologies arrive in the forecourt with new vehicles to when the IMT will have enough critical mass out in the market that they're starting to see it as viable to repair. Because for the first few years, the cars are going to go through warranty through the franchise networks. But it will come, and I think it ultimately is going to be driven by cost and competitiveness. They will react, and I think that will force all of the brands to ensure that they have cost-effective solutions to some of these really high-tech pieces of kit. You don't want to have to spend £5,000 to repair a vehicle that's worth £1,000. We're going to have to find more creative solutions for that. would be my view.
Yeah.
I think there's been a question come in around mobility and whether car sharing will prompt a shift in the market. What's your view, Juan, on that one? Is that something Mercedes are looking at in terms of your ownership models?
I think mobility sharing is, of course, in the portfolio of everyone right now. Before COVID, again, the answer would be different, and I would say, it's clearly going to happen. Again, after or during COVID, and again, my feeling is COVID is not going to be gone. Sorry to say, we are going to get ready for COVID, and at one point will be like the flu, hopefully, and we will be vaccinated, but it will be there, right? So there will be, for me, two kind of person. One person that will not mind much to get together with others in a space, call it a plane, call it a train, a tube, or a car, or the metro. And there will be people, and in my opinion, there will be a big portion of people that will not be happy of sharing transportation, at least for the first 1 or 2 years, at least for the period of time where we have to still use masks. And I assume we will have to use masks for for several months from now, minimum till the end of the year for sure, and let's see later. So, mobility will be a part of the portfolio. Obviously, we will have to check exactly how important it's going to be in the future. I still feel many people will like to own their own vehicle and drive work every day or drive to the supermarket every day without sharing. I also feel,
And in terms of the future, I guess the last big ticket item, and again, something John you touched on, but there was the autonomous vehicles and the reduction in crash repair. Is that something? I mean, this technology has started to hit the markets now. Is that something you're seeing from a Mercedes perspective yet, or is it really too early?
Well, it's not. Again, it's not my field here, Richard. What I can tell you is what I feel. What is there outside in the press or whatever. I feel at one point the autonomous cars will come, right? And the question is again why, when. And if you drive and you live like me in the UK, if you drive from Oxford to Northampton, you are losing signal in 20% of the driving, and you are having 3G in another 50% of the driving. So but again, it's my personal opinion. Please don't take it as a professional opinion. You also need a proper network of 4G minimum, I would say 5G at one point. Because you need that kind of connectivity, right? I don't feel that connectivity is now there, at least not in the UK, and probably not in many other places in the world, right? In the next 10, 15 years, I'm sure that it will happen. The question is exactly how and when.
I think before autonomous driving is there, we have another interesting development happening, and it is happening already, which is the increased connectivity and the service organization, dealer organization, knowing upfront what's wrong with your car, what kind of parts they need. So from that perspective, planning workshops, planning the work to be done, ordering parts, supplying aftermarket becomes more predictable. On the other hand, you see a trend, e-commerce, Amazonization, last minute urgent deliveries. So I see a bit of contrary developments. There is an opportunity to plan everything very well, have a structured supply model in place as a result of increased technology and connectivity. Whilst on the other hand, we see a rush situation. How do you see that from a Mercedes Daimler perspective?
What I feel is, I mean, again, I said in the beginning, I think it's still where we were not really discussing. The supply chain at one point has to be optimized. And I think we are going into that optimization, all of us, in our own business model, whatever that means. For example, I also feel that one part of the picture is what you said. You know, you will have to have at one point information about when to really repair the car, diagnosis, ordering the parts. That's something obviously that is there. I really think what we are missing in the whole picture is how the cities will help us on that, right? And I'm very fascinated by the smart cities concept. You know, in the future, the way I feel it is, we are not yet considering how the city will help us, but the best way to optimize a supply chain for all of us, for Amazon, for you, for us, is that also the cities were able to give us input, right? And tell us, okay, now is the moment to deliver, now is the moment to drive here and there, and you will be much more efficient from the fuel consumption, from the CO2 consumption if you deliver now from A to B. Yeah, so I'm really excited to see how the whole picture is going to be at the end of the day. The monitoring of the vehicle, as you said, the ordering of the parts, how the cities will help us in the future to optimize our supply chain. And what I said in the beginning, John, is if you order an Amazon book today and you get it in an hour, you're probably not going to read the book till the weekend. Of course, you as a customer, you are happy, your expectations are high. Do we really have to follow that model all over? Not sure, right? Probably not. Probably if we have a truck, and that's obviously our philosophy, we have a truck or a vehicle stop pending for parts, we deliver the parts.
Oh, we might have.
We have to think
about a temporary blip with Juan.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, you're back.
Yeah,
you're back.
So I was thinking that if we have obviously a truck, a vehicle pending for parts in a workshop, we deliver as soon as possible. That's clear. The question is, do all of us, we have to replicate the Amazon model in the future? Not really sure, right? We really have to think about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the jury's out on that. I think whilst it's absolutely true that the customer expectations are ever rising, and I mean, John, yes, the Amazonian sort of influence, if you like, no one can ignore. But I do also argue, as Juan does, that I'm not convinced that it's truly necessary. You will always need to be agile. You will always need in the industry to have fast routes to your customers and be able to respond very quickly. But I'm not convinced that's for everything. And if you just take for a moment the example of crash repair, if you have an accident on your vehicle and you wrap it around a tree, you are not going to expect that vehicle back by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's what you need to be able to do is plan the parts effectively, get them into the repair, because the repair has to be booked through the workshop. Yeah. Everything has to come together, the insurance assessments, everything that goes around that whole process. And I see that connectivity as not just being about the car being able to communicate its routine maintenance needs more, which will help predict and have the right parts in the right place at the right time through the most efficient distribution network for that predictability, but also connecting the wider industry together from the repair shops to the body repair, to the dealerships, to the insurance industries, etc., etc. And I think that will bring, slowly, this will all start to meld together and become far more connected, much more sharing of information. And I think that will be a big shift.
Richard, sorry to interrupt, but this is an example that John puts in the beginning of the discussion with the winter and the summer tires, right? Again, thinking about a book. I want to buy a book. I can order today and get it in an hour. Happy, of course. Why not? I'm not going to start the book till Saturday, but I will have it now. Fine. But if you have to drive your car to replace your tires, it's much more easier to plan that properly and say, okay, dear customer, we have to replace your winter tires for summer tires, or the other way around. In those countries where this is done, come in 3 days, the customer plan in 3 days, and obviously not everyone needs a 1 hour delivery for everything. This is my feeling, right?
Absolutely. But so what we in fact see happening with the new technology coming in cars, the connectivity, if we all share that information, we have an opportunity to optimize the supply chain, the part supply.
Absolutely, yeah.
How it will really look like in the future, as you said, Juan, you may see an important role for the cities and maybe have a kind of a city logistics setup to have an optimal supply chain. That we cannot say yet.
What I said is that there are a lot of discussions now about how the cities will help us, obviously, right? And I think the input from the city will be very important in the future as well to minimize supply chain costs and supply chain trips, and also to minimize, as I told you, CO2 emissions, for example, right? So we will also need to know, maybe someone on the workshop is telling you, okay, come on a Friday and you replace this, that. Maybe if you are coming on a Friday, you are getting into a traffic jam for 3 hours, and obviously, having your engine right now running or polluting or whatever. So I think also in the future, the cities will give us input about how to optimize everything in terms of supply chain, in terms of customer time or our time or everything. Right? And we cannot ignore that right now. It's not there yet, but I think in the next maybe 10 years, 5 years, 10 years, it will happen. Yeah.
I've seen one vehicle manufacturer who will remain nameless, but they're a new startup brand in the EV sector, who they're actually their main aim is not actually to build and sell vehicles. That's a secondary aim. That's an enabler, if you like, to actually what they're trying to do, which is get to that data, that connected data. That is expected to be incredibly valuable in the future. And I've said it before on conferences, but there is a very big digital billboard beside the M5, just as you go northbound up towards Birmingham. And if you go past it, it reacts to the speed of the traffic on the overhead M5 as you're going along. It will show adverts with big words, very short words, if you're traveling past at 70 miles an hour. But if you're in a traffic jam, it will put the advert up for much longer with much more detailed information because you've got time to read it. That sort of information is we haven't even begun to think through how all of this data will get used, the value in so many areas. And I think that this whole connected car piece, I think people haven't quite got their heads around yet exactly how this can all be used. But I imagine it's going to be immense.
Yeah, because I think the COVID situation is really bringing an understanding what is really important for all of us, right? And one of those things is time, right? So if you can optimize your time to enjoy family, friends, to work, to drive from here to there, that's the key, right? So I think the time is the optimization. Time is not necessarily always fast or quicker, or the first one is sometimes optimization. Like I have 12 hours today for myself for working and eating and going here and there. You don't need to be the faster for everything. Yeah, you have to just optimize that. And I think this is exactly what you said, Richard. We will see in the future more and more input from the infrastructures and from the cities to help us to optimize our time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's as I said earlier, the crystal ball. Boy, I wish I'd got one that really could see, 10 years out. It is the most exciting time in the industry. As I said, we've pretty much dealt with the same technology, for decades, and now the industry is shifting like it's never done before, at a pace that it's never seen before, and it is ultimately, in theory, all about convenience. It's about knowing that when you drive to that city that there's a parking space and your car will direct you to it. In fact, your car will probably park itself for you. That technology is already out there. But that connectivity, knowing when the timing of the traffic lights through a city or the traffic lights talking to the vehicles, means that you probably would be able to eventually drive through a city without even pausing. That'd be nice to think, but
you know, thinking about, I'm a person that I have something that I cannot really work with it, which is when I take a plane, obviously not happening often now, but when I take a plane, I like to be really on time. You know, I hate running into the airport. I really hate it. It makes me feel, you know, lose my nerves. So, you know, the GPS or the Google Maps or things, it helps you, but it doesn't help you in the whole supply chain, just say, right? So if you are able to plan, getting input from the cities, from the airport, like, okay, leave now, no problem. You will get there. The parking will be not crowded. You will be able to park. And then we know at that time there will be X number of people at the airport going into the boarding. And that is the way I see the future of the supply chain, but not in goods, also in people, let's say, right? But you need input from the infrastructure to get that point, right? But yeah, hopefully, as you said, in the future, we will see more and more about that. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how things are changing. As you said, Richard, more and more every day.
I think we've been asked another question. Is there any data showing reductions of vehicle damage due to improved vehicle safety systems? So ADAS type systems. I think if I just put my view and then pass it across to both of you, but I think given the disruption that the market has just seen in the last 12 months, not the market, the globe has seen in the last 12 months, I'm not sure I would feel confident about pulling out too much insight around whether these advanced driver assistance systems are yet having an impact in terms of reducing crash damage and vehicle repair. We've had far less vehicle repair due to the fact that people are driving less and therefore doing less stupid things, to be very blunt about it. I think, therefore, it's too early. I also think that you've got to look at the overall proportion of cars that have these safety systems on yet is very low, and therefore it's all very well that your car can sense the impending emergency ahead and slam the brakes on for you, but if the vehicle behind doesn't have that technology, guess what? There's only going to be one outcome from your vehicle managing to stop in an emergency and having the idiot behind slam into you. So I think it's early days yet, but again, Juan, is there anything that you've seen?
I don't have data, and I agree a little bit with you. Last year, 2020, was the most disruptive year in our lives, yeah, at least in my life, yeah. So whatever happened last year, I don't think is a real indication of the reality. You know, traffic dropped drastically March, April, at all the levels, really came back a lot in summer, and people, I would say, got excited in summer. They could drive again and go into places. And I don't know. I don't have any data, of course, but my feeling is would you say we need more time to really answer this question properly? Yeah.
I have recently read articles about this subject, and in fact, the opposite is happening at the moment to some extent. Even relatively more accident with full electrical vehicles. And theoretically, Richard, I think you're right. Over time, the number of accidents will drop down, but it seems people are not used to drive high torque cars that electrical vehicles are. So there are relatively more accidents at the moment. But coming back on that question, I've also see in general what you will see with electrical vehicles is less parts on and less maintenance on wear and tear and on the powertrain maintenance, but tires is supposed to wear additionally, so people need to spend more on tires with these new vehicles.
Yes, I can see that. I don't have an electric vehicle yet, but I have driven several, and yes, I can imagine that. I think we have got to 11:45. It's been a long and wide-ranging discussion. I hope it's been useful for people, but at that point, I think it's only right that I pass back to Peter.
Thank you, all of you. Really, a very, very good session. Really, personally enjoyed it. Lots of different things that we've still got yet to discuss, but as we don't have the time, we're going to have to call it a day. Any takeaways would you have individually? Looking at, let's put it away slightly differently. What advice would each of you give to anyone who was looking to leave university or going to their first job or whatever into the aftermarket arena? What would you say to them?
Number one would be go for it. I think whatever happens, supply chains exist behind almost every single item that we interact with on a daily basis, whether it's your food, whether it's the transport that got you to school or to the university or whatever. It's everything behind everything you touch and interact with is powered by a supply chain in some form or another. Some of it's visible, an awful lot of it is not. There is never a dull day. The aftermarket for the automotive industry is no different. It is, as I think Professor Dan Jones from Cardiff University once described it, the most complex human endeavour on the planet. I may be biased, but I don't disagree with it. It is complex. There's never a dull day, and it will be needed. It will change, but it will be needed. Go for it.
Yeah. I can only support that, Richard. Go for it. And that reminded me on when I moved into the logistics world. My background is completely different than logistics, but when I moved into it 28 years ago, my boss said one thing: you either sit here 3 months or the rest of your life. And like you said, Richard, there's never a dull moment, and always something happens. And the beauty of supply chain is you're able to make an impact on the happiness of people.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I would add something, which is, if you like solve challenges, and I don't like to use the word problem because, last year we noticed what a problem is, right? So these are not problems, they are challenges. If you like solving challenges, aftermarket and supply chain is the place to be, yeah? And it keeps you busy, and it keeps you excited, and it keeps you motivated. And as Richard said, our feelings is always going to be there. We will always be in a need to transport things from one place to the other. This, in my honest opinion, is not going to change in the short term, right? So this will always be there, and when the times get tougher, we will be there, and everybody will look at us in the beginning like, okay, we need that, and we know that out there is so difficult, but please send us this thing. Exciting place to be for the next many years, hopefully.
Thank you. Well, thank you all, and until the next time, let's keep safe, and look forward to being able to do this a little bit closer, probably.
That would be great.
Take care. Thank you all.
Looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe.
Bye
for now.
Hi, it's Peter again, and thank you for watching the session. Don't forget you can connect with all members EV to each other and start to build relationships for the future. Also, take a look at our supplier showrooms. Our partners have got lots of products and services that they have to offer, which again could be of benefit to you. Make the most of the opportunity, and thank you again for joining us.